Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, November the 1st, 2020. It is currently 7:29 a.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located here in Ovalo, Texas. Well, earlier this morning, I got in my car, and I started driving here to Victory Baptist Church. Now, there was still darkness outside. The darkness was starting to give way to sunlight, but the sun had yet to rise, okay? I know technically we should call it an earth turn, but okay. But I was driving through the early morning darkness, and then as I was driving, the first ray of sunlight broke the horizon. And there it was, this bright sunlight. Darkness was fading. The sunlight was bright. It was shining into the windshield of the car. And as soon as I saw that sunlight, as soon as I saw the darkness give way and the light become the sunlight, it was so bright, immediately this thought came to my mind. And I started thinking about it, And I mean, all the way until I pulled up in the parking lot of the church. I walked through the door, I set everything up. I grabbed a Bible, looked at a couple of commentaries, and I'm thinking, you know what? I think this is an idea that every Christian really needs to consider this morning. So I'm going to share this with you, and I hope you'll give this some serious thought, okay? Because I don't know what it was. I don't know why. I think I understand why the thought came to my mind, but it was at the very moment the sun broke the horizon and the sun, comes shining through the windshield of the car, and the darkness was gone, and there was this bright sunlight shining in my eyes. It was at that very moment that I started thinking about this and started thinking about a scripture. But before I get to the scripture, I want to set this up by having you use your imagination, all right? I want you to think about the election. Coming up, we're going to watch the election unfold here in the United States of America. And I want you to imagine that it's election night. You're sitting there, you're watching all of the election coverage, whatever news channel you choose, you're watching all the election coverage. And it doesn't take long that all of those giving, commentary on the news, you see that they're starting to get very excited. They're starting to, maybe they're in shock. Maybe there's dismay. They can't believe what's going on. They're like, ladies and gentlemen, you may want to sit down. You're not going to be able to believe this, but we are witnessing something that we have never seen in the history of American elections. Tonight, here in the United States of America, and every race, it doesn't matter if it's a mayor, doesn't matter if it's, if it's a governor, doesn't matter if it's Congress, doesn't matter if it's senator, it doesn't matter if it's a judge. In every race, in every state, in every county here in the United States of America, we can report tonight that Democrats are winning every single office. Not just winning, they're winning by a landslide. It's the most lopsided victory that we have ever seen. It's all one-sided. It doesn't matter where we go. It doesn't matter if we go to a conservative state. It doesn't matter if we go to a liberal state. Democrats are winning everything. They are becoming the new mayors. They're going to be the new governors. They're going to control every office of government. All the judges being elected are Democrats. The President Trump is losing by numbers that we didn't even think were humanly possible. It is an absolute landslide. The Democrats have an absolute mandate to now bring in any and every policy they want because the American people have spoken and they are 100% behind the Democrats. The Democrats are going to bring in every policy, anything and everything they want. They're going to be able to pass it. This is going to be the most sweeping change in American history. America is going to be fundamentally transformed into a completely different country over the next 6 months, over the next year. It's going to be something for the history books. And you're sitting there watching this going, what is happening? Democrats have won everything. They're going to bring in this idea. They're going to do this. They're going to do this. They're going to change this. And you start feeling anxious and you start feeling concern, you start feeling worry, and you start going, oh, no, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to religious liberty? What's going to happen? And you start fearing the worst. Now, what if I was to tell you that could possibly be the best scenario, the best thing to ever happen for American Christianity? Would you think I was absolutely crazy? Would you think I was foolish? What if I was to tell you that could be literally the best thing that could happen to the church right now in 2020? The best thing that could happen to the church in America is that Democrats win everything. Every seat of government. They control everything. And let me say, I think it would be the best case scenario if not only Democrats won, but they ultimately declare a war on biblical Christianity and Christian morality and the church. They go after everything. They go after the church. They take away the tax-exempt status from the church. They enact laws that go against religious liberty. It's just a full-blown, like they want to change the country fundamentally. They want to change the morality. They want to change everything about the country. What if I was to tell you that could possibly be the best thing that could happen? Would you think I was crazy? Now, the reason I started thinking this, again, was because of the sunlight. Here was darkness, and all of a sudden, the darkness was gone, and there was this bright sun that just burned away the darkness. And you're like, how in the world did you get from sunlight to Democrats winning everything? Well, here is the reason why. As the sun came up, I started thinking of this verse. You probably know it very well. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Here's the prophet Isaiah, and it's when King Uzziah dies. It's when King Uzziah dies that he sees the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up. Now, I know there is some debate among some Bible scholars, translators, that maybe he saw the Lord right before Uzziah died. Maybe he saw him after. There's some debate on is it before or after. I understand that, but just going with what the text seems to be indicating, at least in the King James, we're going to go with the idea that he sees the Lord high and lifted up after King Uzziah dies. Almost like as long as King Uzziah was on the throne, the focus was on King Uzziah. As long as King Uzziah was sitting on the throne, Israel was focused on the king. They were looking towards the king. And once he died, then they were filled with anxiety. They were filled with worry. They would begin to tremble. But then guess what they saw? The darkness of this time of anxiety, this time of confusion, this time of doubt, this time of worry. They begin to see the Lord lifted up. The darkness of the King Uzziah was gone, and this time of confusion and darkness gave way to the bright sunlight of the Lord high and lifted up upon the throne. Now, he'd always been there. The Lord is always on the throne. In good times and bad times, he's always upon the throne, but sometimes earthly things can block our view of God high and lifted up. And maybe Israel was so focused on Uzziah sitting on the throne that they missed the Lord on the throne. So I looked this idea up in a couple of commentaries just to see, am I onto a something? Because, I'd studied this before, but I just wanted to make sure. So I looked up one commentary. Here's the first commentary I looked at. The divine answer to the anxious foreboding which naturally arose in the minds of those because of the death of a strong and successful ruler. So they said this, in a way, this almost was a divine answer to the anxious foreboding and the anxious thoughts that naturally arose in the minds of the people because of the death of a strong and successful ruler. The earthly king had passed away, and now Isaiah sees the true king in his glory. I think Christians have become so politically hijacked that we've almost looked to the Republican Party and to Donald Trump as the one who's going to bring God back, as our savior, as the one who's going to protect the church and save our religious freedom and end abortion, all of these things that and when I say we, I'm just saying because I'm a Christian as well, not because I necessarily agree with how Christians have viewed Trump, but how Christians have looked to Trump. Maybe, and the Republican Party, maybe if we woke up the day after the election and every Republican loses every office, everything. It's the most lopsided victory in history. There's no Republican anywhere to be seen. They lose everything. They lose literally everything. And you wake up to that reality. Now you can no longer look to the White House. You can no longer look to Congress. You can no longer look to the Senate. You can no longer look to judges. You can no longer look to mayors. You can no longer look to governors. The whole country has become democratic. I wonder what Christians would look to. What would be the divine answer? Is it possible that then and then only would the church stop looking to the American flag, stop looking to Trump, start looking to the White House, and they would look and see the Lord high and lifted up upon the throne? Another commentary stated it this way. Like all devoted citizens, Isaiah had venerated King Uzziah. I want you to hear that. Like all devoted citizens, Isaiah had venerated King Uzziah. For 52 years, Uzziah had led Judah at a program of peace and prosperity. It was an era of expansion and achievement. It was unfortunate that the king had rebelled against the word of God and died a leper. Isaiah realized that though the nation had prospered materially, it was in terrible condition spiritually. The economic growth and temporary peace was a veneer that covered a nation with a wicked heart. What was going to happen to Judah? God lifted Isaiah's eyes from himself and his people to the throne of heaven. I would have written it differently. God lifted Isaiah's eye from the earthly throne to the throne of heaven. That's how I would have written the commentary. He can't look to the earthly throne anymore. King Uzziah is gone. Can't look to the one who brought them such peace and expansion and helped the country in a lot of material ways. And we could talk all the different things Uzziah did. That's gone. He's gone. And now what he sees is that there's a true king. In fact, let me go back to Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1 and read the exact words. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. And above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And he cried unto another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The whole earth is full of his glory. The only problem is that they had not been looking to the glory of God. They had been looking to the glory of an earthly king. The problem is the earthly throne was blocking their view of the heavenly throne. Wouldn't it be crazy that the best thing that could happen to the church is that a party that Christians view as being the most anti-Christian, anti-God, anti-family, anti-morality party, because that's how Christians viewed the Democrats, as being evil, ungodly. They're going to bring in, abortion for this, and they're going to do this, and transgender, LGBTQ, the Equality Act. They're going to destroy religious liberty. All the things that we say Democrats are going to do, let's say all of that plays out worse than we even imagined. And they control everything. There's no one to stop them. There's nowhere to stop them. Congress, Senate, nothing. The president, everything is controlled by that party. And they just start enacting one law after another law after another law. They start changing this. They do this. They do this. They do that. And it's like the church feels like it's completely under attack and that the world has completely turned against us. Could it possibly be at that moment that we would say, I see the Lord high and lifted up? We would have no earthly throne to look to. We'd have no earthly White House to look to, no earthly leader, no earthly president. No, we would only see the king. Is it possible? I don't know if I should say this. Is it possible that maybe what we should pray for is that on election day, all earthly hope is taken from Christians? Is it possible that what the church should be praying for is that God would destroy all our earthly hope? That there's nowhere to look except to the Lord on his throne, high and lifted up. The angelic beings crying, holy, holy, holy. Because the minute we see God on his throne, we see him as he truly is, then we will ultimately finally see ourselves as we really are, because I think sometimes we think we're far better than we really are. But when we see God as he truly is, then we become hit with the reality of what we are. We are unclean. We live in a world of unclean people. We're all ungodly. We're all unworthy. Then maybe that would lead to a true purifying of the church. The church cannot be purified until it sees God high and lifted up on his throne. Until we get a right understanding of God, there is no being purified. There's no cleansing. There's no change. There's no true revival. Maybe the thing that's blocking so much of spiritual success in the church is because we believe there's someone in the White House that is in a sense our King Uzziah, blocking our view of the heavenly throne. I just, and again, it was the minute that darkness gave away to the sunlight. All of a sudden that sunlight blinded me. And I'm like, that's what we need. Is it possible that in a way that what we viewed as a spiritual victory, what we viewed as a major turning point in America, and that America was going to be brought back to God, and this was a great thing. It was a wonderful thing for Christians and for the church. The election of Donald Trump, as 82% of white evangelicals, voted for him. Well, maybe they saw that as a time of great victory, but in reality, it was a time of great spiritual darkness. And the minute that darkness is removed, then we would see the glory of God. Not because the Democrats were elected, okay? Not because their party would be the one we would turn to. No. Maybe it would demonstrate that we should not be looking to any earthly power. We should not be looking to any earthly throne. We should be looking to the throne in heaven. I cannot be dogmatic. Now, obviously, I can be dogmatic about this. Obviously, what I just described is Democrats winning everything from mayor to governor to judges. They're not going to win everything. Obviously not. So obviously I'm using an illustration here. But if it was to happen, could it possibly be that would be the best thing that could happen to the church? Let me ask this question. If Donald Trump was to win and Republicans was to regain majorities in different areas, is it possible that could be the worst thing that could happen to Christianity? Is it possible that could do more spiritual damage than we can even realize? Is it possible that we have suffered more spiritual damage over the last 4 years that the history books are going to write about? The history books are going to write about what happened from 2016 to 2020, and they're going to talk about how this was a turning point in American Christianity, and it was not for the good, it was for the bad. If Trump was to win another 4 years, is it possible that could be absolutely detrimental and destructive to American Christianity? Could that be the turning point where there is no turning back? I know we want to look at what would be best politically. We may want to even I know sometimes Christians, we want to see what's best politically. We may want to argue what's best for our country. But Christians should be thinking, what is best for us spiritually? What is best for the church? What is best for God to receive the greater glory? Is it possible that we have become so blinded by our political affiliation that we can't see the throne of God and that we need, in a sense, our Uzziah to be removed? I'm not calling for death, I'm calling removal through election. Obviously, Uzziah died, and then Isaiah saw the Lord high and lifted up. I'm just saying, maybe we have placed our hope and politicians, and I know Christians will say, no, I trust in God. I know we say that. Look, Christians always know the right words to say, all right? You don't get any extra points for knowing the right words. It's what's really going on. It's what look at what Christianity has been fighting and arguing and all the things that we've tried to do. It seems like that our focus is on an earthly throne, earthly power, earthly solutions to our earthly problems. We want to fight a cultural war. We want to change things through law, politics, Supreme Court. We want to accomplish all of these things through an earthly way. It's like we're relying too much on the flesh. And when are we going to realize that we've got to stop looking to an earthly throne and look to a heavenly throne and stop worrying about weapons that are carnal, but looking at weapons that are spiritual and powerful through God, through the pulling down of strongholds? That we are not fighting against flesh and blood, but we're fighting a spiritual battle that we need to overcome through prayer and fasting and through the proclamation of the gospel. Maybe we've been blinded. Maybe all we could see was an earthly throne. And while we're claiming we're looking to a heavenly throne, but our allegiance was really to that. Has our allegiance been more to a flag and to a country and to an ideal than it has been to the Creator, to God? Now, I have no idea what's going to happen on election night. I don't know if our country descends into a period of great chaos. There are people out there thinking we're going to find ourselves in the midst of a civil war. Here's what I know. Whether your party wins, whether your party loses, I don't care what happens on election night. I don't care what happens the day after the election. While everyone's worried about that, please, I beg you, that's all darkness. Allow all of that darkness to give way to the glorious light of the glory of God. Just like the darkness of night gave way to the first rays of sunlight this morning as I was driving here, in the West Texas sky, there was the rising of the sun. And maybe what we need in the church is the rising of seeing God upon his throne and his glory. That's what we need to see. While the whole world is on social media arguing and fighting about the election, the results of the election, everyone's going to claim if Trump loses, they're going to claim that it was rigged and that everyone's going to get caught up in all these conspiracies and everyone's going to be making claims. Whoever wins is the other side is going to say it's not legitimate, that it was fake and it's not real and they cheated and everyone's going to be fighting about all of that. And it's just going to add darkness and darkness and more darkness and more darkness and more darkness. And somewhere the church needs to say, move all of that out of the way. There's where we're looking. The throne of heaven. God is there. He's been there. He's going to remain there. And no matter what happens here on earth, he is still upon the throne. That is where our hope is. That's where our trust is. That's where our allegiance is. That's where our affections are to be. That's where we are to look to. That's where our citizenship is. I think the church, I hate to say this, I think the church in 2020 needs to suffer total and complete political defeat. And I hate to say that the church should suffer political defeat because the church shouldn't even be involved in it, but the church has so sold itself to politics. I wish the church, and I almost pray this, well, at least I hope, I'll put it this way, I want God's will to be done. That's what I want ultimately. I want God's will to be done. But I pray that God in his mercy would allow Christians and the church to suffer complete and utter political destruction. We'd stop relying on the arm of the flesh. We would rely on God. Now, I know that may sound crazy, but I want you to really think about it. And I know, and again, for some who don't even think spiritually anymore, they think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm insane. But I don't think what I'm saying is that radical. I think what I'm saying is very biblical. And I pray that you would give it some consideration. You can email me your thoughts about all of this to newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Let me conclude by reading from Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And one cried unto another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the post of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I'm a man of unclean lips. I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Thanks for listening.